Okay, thank you for joining us for today's event, the Reading Culture Advantage, Boosting Achievement Across the Curriculum. This is part 3 of a 4-session virtual book study of Dr. Margaret Murga's book, Creating a Reading Culture in Primary and Secondary Schools, a Practical Guide. My name is Susie Tonini, and I'm the School Library Consultant for the Colorado State Library. I'm joined today by Tia Frankish. She's our Library Development Director, so thank you again for being here, Tia. And we'll be leading you in the 4 virtual book study sessions. Today's event is being recorded, and all registrants will receive an email with a link to the recording as well as any resources shared during the presentation. Okay, so we started this back in January. Where have we been? In Module 1, we learned about the why. Why is it important to promote reading engagement and build a school-wide culture of reading? Why? Because high-quality, evidence-based reading instruction is essential, and it's not the only tool in our toolbox. Extensive research shows that reading engagement and reading culture also affects students' reading achievement. In Module 2, we learned about the what. What are the research-supported practices that promote reading engagement? We learned that research-backed practices for promoting reading engagement fall under 10 main categories, and these are the 10 key strategies for transforming a school culture into a reading culture. And that brings us today, Module 3. So today we begin to focus on the how. How do we get others on board to create a reading culture? How do we lead change? And we'll focus on the first 3 steps of the Reading Culture Action Plan. Number 1, identify key stakeholders. 2, assess the opportunity for change. And 3, empower stakeholders to commit. And if you haven't already, you can click the link on this slide and create your own copy of your Reading Culture Action Plan so you can start filling that out. And we'll also drop that into the chat as well. Okay, let's jump in. If you take anything away from today, remember this. One person, one individual cannot create a school-wide reading culture. To illustrate this, the National Library of New Zealand developed the Reading Community Framework for school leaders, teachers, and library staff. And it recognizes that reading can't be left to individuals. It requires staff to collaborate and adopt a whole school approach. And step 1 in the Reading Culture Action Plan is to recruit key collaborators. Who in your building and who outside your building can help you create a whole school approach to promote reading engagement? Who are your reading champions? Who will be those early adopters of a whole school reading culture? Like, who's your Colby Sharp? And as Murga states, you'll need to draw on support from within and beyond the school to realize this goal. So be thinking about PTA, community organizations like the Rotary Club, your public library partners, potential grant funders. And then step 2 is to assess the opportunity for change. And we're going to really drill down into this today. So what is your school doing to promote reading engagement and creating a reading culture? In the chat, you guys already listed so many areas of strength. And what are gaps or areas that you would like to develop or enhance? And these gaps and areas to develop or enhance, those are your opportunities for change. The Reading Community Framework draws on research and years of experience working with school staff to support the development of reading cultures. And it highlights 7 interconnecting factors that school communities need to create engaged readers: leadership and expectation, reading environment, knowledge and practice, access, reading experiences, homeschool partnerships, and school library and community connections. And to assess the opportunity for change, you can use or adapt the National Library of New Zealand's Reading Culture Review tools. The tools help you consider 12 aspects of your school's reading culture, each of which relates to one of the 7 petals in the Reading Community Framework. And while some of aspects of the tool might not be relevant or applicable to your school or situation, The tool can help to generate reflection, thoughts, and ideas about your school's reading culture and start a conversation about opportunities for change. Now, I know all of you have super busy lives, and so we're going to carve out 5 minutes right now because I know like once you walk away from today, you likely have lots of other responsibilities. So we're going to just take 5 minutes, and I'd like for you to either review the primary school or the secondary school reading culture review tool, and we're going to drop those into the chat. Choose the one that best aligns with your role or interest. And I recommend just going straight to page 3 so you can dive right into the rubrics. And as you read the review tool, focus on any gaps or areas you'd like to develop or enhance, because those are your opportunities for change. And that's what we're going to be discussing with our campfire crew in just a few minutes. But I want to give you a few minutes just to read, absorb, think about what you might want to share with your campfire crew around what is an area that's more of a weakness that you would think is a key opportunity for change. So go ahead and click on either the primary school or secondary school tool, and then I'm going to be quiet for 5 minutes. And I'll call us all back together in just a second. It's just about time to meet with your campfire crew. So after reviewing the reading culture rubrics and reflecting on the gaps or areas that you'd like to develop or enhance at your school, which of those gaps to improve do you feel like are key opportunities for change? And how will that benefit students? That's what our topic is for today's campfire crew. So I'm going to put the discussion question, actually T's going to help me out there. The discussion questions in the chat, and you're welcome to copy it if you'd like, again, to have it as a reference in your breakout room. Please begin your discussion by introducing yourselves, your role, where you're from, and we'll have 15 minutes to be able to share with your campfire crew members. So again, thinking about gaps and those areas that you want to improve, which one of those, or it might be a few that you really want to focus on, will be key opportunities for change to transform your current school culture into a robust reading culture. As you're coming back, I would love to hear some examples of what you all talked about. What are those key opportunities for change at your school? If you can just drop those into the chat. Books from when our students were alive, more teacher collaboration. Teachers talking about books they're reading, getting them to read current YA children's books. Market books to staff as well as students. Make sure they know which books you've added. Yeah, these are great examples.
Susie, I loved the one in my group. I think Helen was telling me that they picked the cutest teacher in the building and asked that person to tell their favorite book, and everybody wanted to read that book.
Working with admin for more buy-in and getting teachers on board. Adults becoming more visible as readers. Invite families in to browse and borrow books from the school library. I love that. Reading books from the 90s. Yep. Teachers modeling reading. Getting admin on board. Lots of great ideas there. Fantastic. Well, I hope you all enjoyed your discussion with your campfire crew today. We're going to keep moving. We still have a lot to cover. So we're going to move into step 3. I encourage you to keep adding your opportunities for change into the chat. But let's jump into step 3. So step 3 is empowering stakeholders to commit. And Varga states that at this step, you need to raise the need for change, highlighting benefits for students and staff that are responsive to stakeholder needs. So this includes sharing information about students' reading habits and attitudes. And in modules 1 and 2, we learned some great strategies for collecting this type of information from Julia Torres and Donalyn Miller and Colby Sharp. This also needs to include highlighting the benefits for students and staff. And to paraphrase Murga's citation of Al-Qahtani's research, you will need to effectively communicate advantages of the change, and you will need to strategically allay fears of school staff. For any substantial changes that will be implemented, show that close attention is being paid to the impact on school staff's workload and well-being. Folks have so much on their plate. And so as you're thinking about any kinds of changes that will be made, making sure that those are top considerations, workload, well-being, and that those are being considered as part of this change. And as an educator who's lived through many swings of the pedagogical pendulum, I especially love Murga's quote of Grant. Practical people that we are, no teacher is going to jump blind into a still lake just because someone suggests it's a refreshing experience. They will want to know why this has to be done, what the benefits might be, how will the change actually happen, and who will be its true agent. And the most effective place to start a conversation about changes in instructional practices, structures, or tools is beliefs. Teachers' underlying beliefs about students' learning and teaching. And the Pyramid of Change is a model of change management created by a team of educators in Weld RE4 School District, and that's right here in Colorado. And rather than me summarizing it, I'd like for you to hear directly from Molly Eamonson. She's here with us today as well. She's a teacher librarian in Weld RE4, and she recently led a state library webinar about this model. And I've linked the entire webinar on this slide and really encourage you to just extend your book study learning, view this independently. She has so many incredible ideas. Today will be the highlight reel. Today will be an explanation of the Pyramid of Change model and 2 related strategies for facilitating change. But right now I'm going to turn it over to a recording of Molly explaining what the Pyramid of Change model is.
But this is another model for thinking about how to facilitate change and professional learning, and also in other settings with our adult learners and colleagues. And so at the bottom, you can see is beliefs about students learning and teaching. That is so foundational to everything we do as facilitators and as colleagues, is to think about the beliefs that people bring in to our working experiences. Then on top of that is instructional practices. So what teachers are doing in classes to facilitate learning for students, structures, and tools. And I'll talk more about examples of this, but this was an aha for us because we realized in many cases we were leading professional learning about tools, and we didn't actually know what people's underlying beliefs, practices, and structures were that they were working with. And so many cases, their acceptance of the tool was impacted by beliefs and structures that they came into our sessions with. And we just hadn't taken the time to learn more about that and listen. So let me give you some examples of what I mean by each of these layers. So as librarians, a lot of times we could think of a tool as ebooks or audiobooks. So I have facilitated sessions about Sora and thought about introducing people to Sora, right? But oftentimes you can get people more committed to using an ebook and audiobook resource if it plays into a structure that they already have in their classroom or setting. So in the elementary setting, especially something like literacy centers. So instead of just focusing professional learning on Sora, thinking about how does Sora support you in your literacy centers. We're already getting a little bit more buy-in because we're tying into a structure. The next layer would be instructional practices. So thinking about how whole group and small group literacy instruction looks for a teacher. And here we go again, back to Sora as something that can support you in whole group and small group instruction, even more buy-in happening. The bottom layer of beliefs, one belief we could have about a tool like Sora, right, is that student choice increases effort, performance, and learning. And so if we start our professional learning with this foundational belief around student choice, we are able to come around new tools a lot of times with more readiness because we agree, and many teachers will totally agree with this statement, right? That student choice increases effort, performance, and learning. And so it's easier to start there than it is to just say, hey, here's a new tool, right? So this kind of shows you some examples of how the pyramid would play out in one specific setting.
So in her presentation, Molly shares strategies for leading change based on the Pyramid of Change model. And the first strategy is sharing students' voices by collecting students' responses to a question that provides teaching staff with insight on the school's culture and/or their instructional practices.
So these were filmed from students in my district, actually about 10 years ago. So they're all grown up now. But the question that was asked by the interviewer is, what does it mean to be a good learner? So go ahead and listen to what these students say, and then I'll bring us back together.
What does it mean to be a good learner? To learn about numbers.
My name is Jackson, and I think what to be as a good learner is to be listening. Hi, my name is Sunny, and what I think it is to be a good learner is that you need to listen and listen to your teacher all the time and be good.
And I think it's a good learner when you're listening.
My name is Sophia, and I know that how to be a good learner is looking at the teacher. And you can learn a lot of letters and numbers by teachers that show you how to learn stuff that you can learn. And then you can learn like numbers, words, and you can pick up a book at the library, yelling at the library.
Knowing sort of a little bit about that, what patterns do you notice and why might the students feel that way? So go ahead and hop into the chat and think about what patterns were surfacing in that student interview and why might the students feel that way about their education. Yes, so as you're noticing, these students had a lot of observations that education was about listening to teachers and not about taking an active role in their education. And so the setting that we actually used this in was, I worked at the time in an international baccalaureate school, and we had our site visit. You have to get a site visit every 3 years or so. And the site visitors came and they said, you know what, you guys are doing a great job, but as we walk through the halls, there's not a lot of inquiry happening that makes us think that this school is any different than your standard elementary school. And so at the time we thought, whoa, how are we going to take this news to staff? Because staff are working hard. They're doing their best. They're not going to accept this news very well. But what we did was create this video using student voices, talking about what does it mean to be a good learner, showed this to teachers. The teachers had the same aha you had of, wow, this is really passive. It feels like all they're hearing from us is that we're in charge. And so that was a great kickoff around beliefs and talking about the shared beliefs of the staff around students having agency in their own learning, which led us to then some professional learning about how to create more inquiry-based learning experiences in a school.
I think this would absolutely be used to start conversations about your reading culture. And since our goal is to shed light on reading culture and reading instructional practices, we could shift that question. So a potential question to elicit feedback from elementary age students is, what does it mean to be a reader? And for you folks who are elementary, like thinking about like, what do you think your elementary students would answer? What does it mean to be a reader? If we're thinking about secondary level, a potential question could be, in what ways does this school encourage reading for pleasure? And interviewing students and being really strategic about it. So making sure you're interviewing students at each grade level, making sure that's you're either recording their audio or recording videos so that you're truly capturing their voices to be able to share out. Thinking about different groups of students, making sure that you're capturing different demographics so that you can see patterns in how students might perceive reading and reading opportunities at your school. So that's one potential strategy. And again, you're thinking about step 3, empower stakeholders to commit. This is a way that you can potentially create buy-in. So again, collect students' responses to a question that provides insight on the school's reading culture, And then, similar to what Molly was sharing, lead staff in discussion about the students' feedback. Ask them, what patterns do staff notice? Why might students feel this way? And how might students' responses compare to the staff's beliefs about teaching and learning? A second method for starting a conversation about change from a place of beliefs is the continuum strategy. And I'm going to share a statement and ask you to respond to that statement. So if you strongly agree with a statement, you'll type a 1 in the chat. And if you strongly disagree with a statement, you'll type a 10 in the chat. And if you're somewhere in the middle, pick a number in the middle. And again, I need to credit Molly. When she uses this professional learning strategy, she always starts off with an easy practice statement, and I'm borrowing her example. So summer is the best season. Where are you on the continuum? And again, number 1, strongly agree. 10, strongly disagree. All right, and I'm going to call on a couple of folks. So Bethany and Libby, if you wouldn't mind dropping into the chat why you strongly agree that summer is the best season, just a quick explanation. And then let's see, do we need pens? How about Lee and Kristen, if you wouldn't mind dropping into the chat why you're more on the strongly disagree and the continuum. I feel you, Libby. So Libby says she wants to read outside and hike. And Bethany says the days are longer and I love all the life between plants and trees. Lee does not like to be sweaty. I get that. And then Kristen just loves winter. She loves being bundled up and cozy. Fantastic. Okay, so we've got the hang of it. Now we're going to try a continuum statement that's related to reading. And well, actually, we're going to see how this plays out. We're going to see Molly's example during her webinar.
Reading is the most important skill a child can learn. Give me a number. Oh, see, now they learned what happens is people learn that they call on the outliers and then they're like, oh, I'm not putting a 1 or a 10 ever again. So Lisa, would you mind telling us a little bit about what you're thinking? And Susie, would you mind telling us a little bit about your thinking in the chat? And then we'll compare. Okay. Yes, so Susie says reading opens doors to learning about the world. And then Lisa's pointing out that there are a lot of social skills that also guide you through life. So you don't need reading to be a good human. And interestingly, Susie has her camera on, so I can see her nodding. What you'll notice starts to happen with this continuum activity is even people who are far apart on the continuum will nod their head when they hear a point of view from the person on the other end. And that's because a lot of times when we are thinking about our own beliefs, we know that there's more to it than just what we're saying, right? So Susie acknowledges, like, yeah, you're right. Social skills, you're right. Even though she was an 8. And so in professional learning settings, a lot of times people come in with what they feel is a very strongly held belief toward one side. But when they hear the other side, they realize that that also captures their experience and their beliefs as well. And so this is an activity that helps people see differing points of view, but also bring people together toward some shared beliefs as well. So I usually facilitate more of these. I'm not going to make you go through typing in the chat multiple times, but I'll show you some other questions. One was, schools should always listen to what district leadership tells them. I've done this in a setting with district leaders and also with teachers. It's interesting to see what you get.
That's a loaded question, Molly.
Yeah, I know. And teachers should be trusted as professionals and left to do their work. And you'll notice, yes, they are loaded. All of these use words like always, must, have to, should. That is because you want to create a strong reaction from someone so that they go to one under the other. If you put in something generic like reading and social skills are important for students to learn. Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we agree with that, right? You're not going to get a lot of differing perspectives. And so the best statements with these truly are ones where you read it and you think, yikes, right? Because you're trying to have people have conversations about beliefs that is hard. Teachers don't talk about their beliefs about education, about leadership, about all of these things very often, but those beliefs shape intensely what they do, right? And how they react to things. And so activities like this help us sort of see different perspectives and come together. Let me show you how I've used this with another team in action. So we have a group in our district called the AI Task Force. We're coming around what are our district policies, procedures, thinking around artificial intelligence. And so we composed a group of teachers, leaders, some community members, some students to talk about what AI should look like in our district. And these are some of the statements we did for this continuum activity. We actually did 7. And again, you'll notice they are, they're not neutral. They're not neutral statements, right? AI is dangerous. We picked that word specifically because we knew it would elicit feelings in people that they would want to talk about. And so we did this continuum activity with the group. And then we built our belief statement on AI based on the conversation we had. So you'll see one of the continuum activities was AI literacy is as essential as reading and writing. And then in our belief statement, we said learning to differentiate what is real from what is not, alongside mastering foundational reading and writing skills, is essential for our students. And yes, you are going to get the slides. So you can see in this belief statement that we used, can you imagine the 2 different ends of the continuum here, right? Someone stood there and said, students have to learn what's real and what's not. And someone at the other end said, they need reading and writing skills. And so we sort of merged this into a belief statement that captured both of those perspectives so that moving forward, we'd make sure to consider those in our work. Here's another example of how we did this with the task force. Schools should promote equitable access to AI. That was a continuum. And then our statement in the beliefs was equitable access to skills rather than just tools need to be prioritized for all learners. Again, do you see the ends? People talking about skills, people talking about tools, kind of came together here in this statement that captures both. The last one, AI is superior to human intelligence. We captured both sides. AI has more access to data and leverages human creation and intelligence, but humans bring empathy, creativity, and relationships. And the thing that's powerful about this statement is everyone in the room was like, yes, because they felt like it captured an element of their beliefs, right? We were able to sort of bring everyone together around this and use this to shape our work. So that's a great activity using for beliefs.
I thought that just so closely mirrored the work that we're doing around essentially creating a reading culture task force. And Molly, just thank you again, because I think that is such a fantastic model for how do we start from this foundational belief system and really draw from that to create initiatives that everyone is really bought into. Again, when you create your statements, if you're using this strategy, you want to make sure that, as Molly said, that they're not neutral. So statements that elicit beliefs and feelings about reading, those are the ones that will create that robust discussion. And it's going to provide a mechanism for staff to share diverse perspectives and experiences. And that discussion is what can lead to the development of a school-wide shared belief statement or statements about reading culture. And that school-wide shared belief statement or statements, that's what will shape that powerful vision that you create in step 5 of the Reading Culture Action Plan. Some more examples of some non-neutral continuum statements include parents are the most important social influencers of students' reading attitudes. So that statement could lead to a discussion about the roles that both school staff and parents and caregivers play in modeling reading. The continuum statement, it is the school's responsibility to provide students with access to recreational reading materials. That could lead to a meaningful discussion about school library access. Before we move on, I just want to invite Molly. Molly, is there anything else that you want to add to, anything I missed, anything you want to add, or does anyone have a question for Molly since we have the benefit of having her here with us?
No, I think you captured that perfectly, Susie. And I do think reading culture is a set of beliefs, right? So I loved seeing sort of how you adapted these things toward reading culture. And I just can't, I can't speak highly enough about just having conversations with people about this, even if they're informal, because educators just don't talk about these things, right? You just do things because someone told you, and you don't think about why you feel a certain way about it. And so thank you, Susie, for sharing this and leveraging it toward this process.
Thank you to you. I think a lot of times educators aren't asked or aren't at the table when a lot of these decisions are made. So again, I think that again creates that powerful buy-in piece. Okay, so today we focus on the high level how. How do we get others on board to create a reading culture, and how do we lead change? And I hope that you now feel more confident and equipped to execute the first 3 steps of the Reading Culture Action Plan. Today we emphasize that you can't do this alone. Step 1 is to identify those key collaborators. Step 2 is assessment. Just like with students, we need to start by evaluating strengths and needs. And before we make changes, assess that current reading culture. What are the strengths? What are the gaps? What are those areas to develop or enhance? And step 3, empower stakeholders to commit. We don't create real buy-in by just applying more pressure or workload to school staff, students, or parents or caregivers. We really empower stakeholders by authentically engaging them in discussion about their underlying beliefs and how to create a reading culture that reflects their diverse perspectives. So next week, not next week, in 2 weeks, this will be our final module. We're going to focus on the nuts and bolts how. How do you successfully execute the plan? And I want to show you an example of someone who has pulled this off. We'll be joined by a live guest speaker. She'll be joining us from Sydney, Australia. Her name is Gabrielle Mace. She's the founder of Pro Reading Solutions, and she's the former teacher librarian at Queenwood School for K-12 students in Sydney. A key highlight of her career is the implementation of the Just Read program at Queenwood. It was a school-wide reading initiative celebrated for its evidence-based approach and adherence to best practices. Essentially, the entire school dropped everything and had sustained silent reading every day at the same time, and along with lots of other ways to promote that reading culture. But it was a huge success. They received a school-based research project grant to implement the Just Read program, and the academic mentor for the project was Margaret Murka. So she will be like the perfect fit for capping off our book study. And I strongly encourage you to either read the Queenwood final report. I've linked that in on this screen. Or if you have the time, it would be an excellent way to just prepare you for any questions you might have for Gabrielle. She has a 1-hour webinar that was hosted by Follett called Empowering Literacy Whole School Initiatives from the Library. She delivers a really engaging presentation. It explores the school library's role in promoting literacy across their curriculum, and she shares all kinds of strategies: conducting a literacy audit, leading a whole school sustained silent reading program, engaging stakeholders, creating an inclusive reading environment, fostering collaboration, amplifying student voice. She packs it all in an hour. So I really think it'll energize you, get you excited about this last module. So if you have the chance, please take some time to watch that before we jump into module 4. And as always, the Colorado State Library values your feedback. Here, we're going to drop the link into the chat, the reflection evaluation form. And if you'll be requesting 5 continuing ed contact hours for participating in the book study, please be sure to complete the entire reflection form. If you prefer to provide anonymous feedback and you're not asking for contact hours, you're welcome to skip to section 2. This is my state library report card, and we share your feedback with our federal funders. So I really appreciate it if you could take a few minutes to give us some feedback. And with that said, that is it for today. And we have one more module to go. Thank you all for being here, sharing your time with the Colorado State Library, and I hope to see you at our next book study session.